What's up, Stock Talk Weekly?
What's going on? How are you?
He
Good.
is adorable. All right, so Stock Talk Weekly. Hi, nice to meet you.
Hey, nice to meet you as well. How
All
you
right,
doing?
hi everybody. Welcome to the OTC Club. All righty, so Stock Talk Weekly. Just give us a little bit about yourself, about your past, and things that you want to share with your audience.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. I'm still a young guy. I'm 28 years old. I've been trading since I was 18, so it's been a little over 10 years for me. I grew up in Canada. I was born in a place called Winnipeg, Manitoba. For all the Canadians, you guys probably know where that is. It's cold and unpleasant, but I mean, hometown is hometown. It was what it was. Around the age of 14, my dad was a PhD in pharmacology, and he got an offer to help A&M start their pharmacology schools, and so we moved down to Corpus Christi, Texas, originally, and that's where I went to high school. And then I kind of was on a path to be in medicine. I did 2,000 plus hours of volunteer service in hospitals when I was in high school, and I was really like dedicated to being a doctor. um, I'm Indian, so anybody who's Indian knows that, like, for brown people growing up, you're either like a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer, or else like you just didn't make it. So that's kind of the path I was on, and yeah, I just kind of had horse blinders on, and I didn't really think about what I wanted to do with my life, which is something that I think a lot of people get stuck in when they're younger. You're so occupied with finding like a skill that you can monetize when you're younger, and that's like the impression that you're given, which is like the right thing to do. And so I was good at it. Like, I'm a good learner, so I was good at medicine and pre-med. And so I got accepted into Baylor College of Medicine as an early admission program, where they admit you out of high school as long as you meet a certain list of requirements in the contract. So you have to do either like a master's program or a thesis. Bottom line is, I got admitted into that program. And so I went to Baylor College of Medicine with a full ride. But this whole time since my senior year, I was trading. And, when you're 18, you don't have, I mean, some people do, but most people don't have a ton of money. I had saved up like, 2,000 bucks cash, and I was trading it, and I turned it into, 10,000 pretty quickly. But the thing is when you start trading, and this is something I tell new traders all the time now, look at your percentage gains and not your dollar gains, because there's so much gain porn on FinTwit about people posting $1 million trades. And then all of these new traders are chasing that feeling. And so, even though I had 5X my account, I didn't realize that that was good. I didn't realize, like, because I was like, oh, I've only made a few thousand bucks. To me, it didn't feel that meaningful. But what I didn't realize was, 500% in your account in 6 months is really good. So, I started trading more and more, and I found myself in the back of my med school classes, like trading rather than listening. And I'm not a big person who says, like, jump on your first passion. I think people should follow their passions, but I think some people take that a little bit too literally. And the first thing that they even kind of like, they just nosedive into, and that sets people up for failure. Sometimes it works out, but it sets a lot of people up for failure. And so I wanted to like be patient and be like, is this really what I want to do? And then in my third year of medical school, we had an oncology rotation that was 16 hours a day for 3 days. And I remember when I got out of that, I was like, there's no way I can do this for the rest of my life and be happy. And that to me was like the crux of the decision. And even though I was in my third year and I was good at it, I was at the top of my class, I was just like, I don't want to do this. And so I left. And it was a hard decision at that time. Like, my dad definitely did not approve, but once you show the returns and you show the money, there's not a lot you can argue with. And that sounds like a superficial way to put it, but growing up in a household where I was like expected to be a doctor or be a lawyer because they make money, I figured the easiest way to defer my dad from that expectation was to show him, look, I'm making a lot more money trading. I'm a lot happier. I have more time to spend, like, with whether it's my girlfriend at the time or whether it's my brother or my family. I was like, I'm just happier, healthier, have more time in my hands, and I'm making more money. So what is there really to frown on at that juncture? And so that was around when I was 23, 24. And then I just got better and better every year. Like, I'm really committed to learning. And, I think that's something I tell people all the time. Like, trading is just like anything else. You have to be better than most people to be good at it. You don't have to be better than everybody, but you have to be better than most people. And to be better than most people, you have to work. You have to read. You have to study. You have to pay attention. You have to know your mistakes, understand like people who aren't asking themselves what they did wrong after every loss aren't doing it right. And you also should be asking yourself what you did right after every win, you know? And so that kind of mentality just drove me to get better and better every year. And now I'm, very financially independent, financially free, which was really my goal. And I'm doing it while I'm happy. And, I've invested in real estate because of stocks. I've been able to start businesses because of stocks. It's just given me ventures into a lot of other income streams. And yeah, it changed my life. It changed my life as a 28-year-old. Whereas, if I'd taken the traditional path and just done medical school and, done it the way I thought I was going to do it, then it would have taken me a lot longer. And I'm not discouraging anyone here. Like, I want to be clear. I'm not discouraging anyone here who is in a professional line of schooling or in a profession that, required a lot of schooling, that's a waste of time. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that each individual person has like a very complex potion that makes them happy, and like no one, people may say, oh, I like watch basketball and 5 million other people like to watch basketball, but like that doesn't make up your whole character. You need to find like a multitude of things that make you happy and a lifestyle that makes you happy. And some people are happy with less money, and some people are only satisfied if they're making $1 million a year. Like people are different. And so, I'm not telling people to follow my path, or if you're in medical school to drop out. Like, I'm not saying that, but it worked out for me. So yeah, that's just my story in a nutshell.
Wow, that
Wow.
was amazing.
Yeah.
From doctor to investor.
Wow.
That was
So
good.
Yeah.
I grew up in a similar household as well, and it was really hard to have, like, not go in the path that, I'm supposed to take or whatever. And it was hard for my parents to understand that. So I definitely resonate with your story. And I do want to ask you, do you make doctor money without having went to medical school?
Uh-oh.
I mean, I don't want to disclose the exact amount, but yeah, I've done pretty well. Yeah.
All right, Dr.
Yeah.
Doctor
Stock
money.
Talk Weekly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't, what I will say is I don't regret not going at all. So that's all that matters.
He's
Doc
not
Talk
a
Weekly.
doctor. He's a
Doc
stockman
Talk
now.
Weekly. There you go.
Yeah. Okay,
Dr.
so
Stock.
Dr. Stock Talk Weekly, I
Dr.
have
Stock.
another question for you.
Yeah, man.
Tell us how you started trading and how Stock Talk Weekly came about.
Yeah, so I mean, that story kind of included how I started trading, right? It was just like out of interest when I started young. And then when I realized I was pretty decent at it, then I just kept being more inclined to learn, right? Like, I feel like when you're decent at something at a young age, then you're more inclined to learn. It's more difficult to make people interested in educating themselves when they don't feel like they're good at something, which is why I feel like encouraging kids at a young age is so important. It sounds kind of obvious, but I just feel like it's really critical. Not necessarily encouraging them like, a lot of the talk is you can do anything, which I also think is equally silly. But encouraging, when you see flashes of greatness or flashes
Yes.
of skill in
Embrace
children,
it.
or
Embrace
you
it.
have to like really capitalize on that. Not only as a parent, like, I mean, I'm not a parent yet, but like, for people who are, I think that's important too. Just as a reflection from somebody who was raised that way, where, I wasn't. My dad told me I was smart every day. And that sounds like, oh, whatever, but it really helped my confidence. Like, it made me feel like, okay, I'm smart. And
Right.
most parents tell their children that, but for the ones that are, like, it really helps you capitalize. And so
For the ones that are.
yeah, but I kind of got, yeah, I mean, for the ones that are, right? Because like, look, I hate that sounds like a dick thing to say, but the reality is like, intelligence can be fostered, definitely. I think it's a nature and nurture thing. But there are certain people that just don't have either the psychological capability to trading, which is really the biggest part, or the will to learn. Like, no one can force you to have a will to learn. If you just hop on Twitter every day and spoon feed everybody stickers they're tweeting and just buy them randomly,
Oh
like,
my
you're never going to
God.
make money consistently. But so it requires a will to be independent. Whatever you're doing, it requires a will to be independent. And so that's part of it for me. Like, if you're doing something that you don't like, then somebody else who's doing it is going to like it more, and they're going to be better than you. All things being equal. And so yeah, I basically, what happened is I kind of went through, when I was 20, my mom passed away, and she died from a really rare autoimmune disorder. It's called BOOP, bronchitis operans obliterans pneumonia. That's complicated, but basically what it is it's an autoimmune disorder that attacks the lungs. And my mom had never smoked a day in her life. So for me, that was like really, she was like my biggest support system. She was like the one that was like, oh, if you don't want to go to med school, don't go. And that was before I went. And so I went kind of thinking like, make her proud, whatever. And then, 2 years ago, my dad passed away as well. And I have a
Wow.
little brother. So, in the course of 5 years, losing both your parents, and I'm still under 30, my brother was younger. My brother's 4 years younger than me. And so I kind of felt like a responsibility to provide for him. And so for me, that drove me to be like, okay, whatever I've been doing, even if I've been doing it well, I need to make more money now because I need to take money out, pay for his school, pay for a place, pay for his rent. Like, because my parents did that for me when I was a kid. And some people may say, like, oh, you're spoiling your brother or whatever. But for me, it was a matter of like, I wasn't forced to go through those stages without parents. And I felt like it was an unfair burden to put on him. And
Right.
so I chose to take that responsibility to take care of him. And I mean, he's growing up now. So, he's getting to the point where he's going to go into international business. And so he's getting his MBA. And so I'm proud of him. But, as he gets to the independent stage, I felt like my parents would have been mad at me if I didn't provide for him. And so that really encouraged me to get more serious into trading and really like dedicate myself to it. And now I am where I am.
Wow. Wow. And you're under 30 still, huh?
Yeah, I'm 28.
Oh my God. It's so crazy like to hear like every you're so young, so it's so cool and inspiring to hear your story. I think Doll fell off, so I'll go ahead and ask her question and wait for her to come back. Um well, I am very in awe for with your story. That's so crazy and I admire you a lot. Um I guess let's lighten up here on Doll's question. Were you the first to alert PHUN and DWAC?
DWAC, I mean, DWAC was pretty widely covered. I'm pretty good about tweeting news in a timely fashion. So when the deal was announced the day before, I was like one of the first like, big accounts to tweet it. I don't think I was the very first, but a bunch of big accounts were talking about it the night before. Um, so that one was, I think, a pretty popular FinTwit play. I wouldn't say there was any really like, it was more so just the news coming out, and then people jumping on it and kind of seeing the potential. But with fun, I personally, I mean, like, the thing is, when I'm trading during the day, and I don't mean this in an arrogant way, but like, I don't really care what's coming down my feed. I'm more so looking at my charts and my level two data and my watch list, and like, because I'm actively trading every day. And so, when I saw the news about the way I got to fund basically was once DWAC was up 300%, I was thinking, okay, finding an entry to scalp this on the way up is going to be hard because there was no price history on the chart, right?
Right,
Like this was a
right,
SPAC that went from $10 flat to instantly skyrocketing. So there's no reliable price history that you can be like, oh, there's a good support here. Like there was no reliable, when I'm day trading, I like to have reliable price history to trade off of. So
right.
my thought was, okay, I want to find another play. If there's this much volume coming into this play, and like it's up 400%, I want to find a sympathy play that people will be excited to buy. So I just started by getting on Google and looking up what public companies is Trump involved in, and I couldn't really find like that. That was literally it. I was like, hey, look, if people are gonna go this crazy over his SPAC, like they might at least pump up another play at least 100%. So I was looking for what could be sympathy, and I couldn't really find anything. And then I found this article from May 2020 that said that Funware built his reelection application, his reelection mobile app. And so I was like, oh, well, this is going to be a mobile app. They built his last mobile app. There's a good chance they'd be involved in this one. And I still don't know if that's true, but it was just pure speculation. So I tweeted out the article and said I was buying it at $1.10. And then, some people took it seriously initially, but then the next morning it ran to $24. So it was just,
Jesus
yeah, it was
Christ.
the biggest trade of my career because usually, you can make 2,000% overnight with a crazy out of the money option, right?
Right,
Or you
right.
can make it on like a warrant play where you just happen to buy it before some news drops, right? But like to make 2,000% overnight on equity is really difficult to do. Like I've been trading for 10 years and I've seen very few of those types of plays where a penny stock will run 2,000% overnight. Like that's just wild. And so it was a huge trade for me. It really like made my week, made my month. But yeah, that was the biggest trade for me, 1 day trade I've ever made.
That's amazing. Um, let me and let's talk about that too. So now we all know we should put notifications on for your profile, right? Everybody got that.
Oh, I'm not gonna knock that. Yeah, definitely do that. Yeah.
Do you have like any mentoring or groups and stuff like that that people can, if they want to follow you or learn from you because you've been trading for 10 years and successfully at that because you're Dr. Stock Talk Weekly? Is there any, subscriptions or mentor programs that anybody could get into?
So right now everything's free. So I actually started Discord earlier this year, but the thing is like I'm also an entrepreneur as well as a trader, and I also take care of my little brother, and I have a lot of other things on the side. So real estate, and so I just realized I didn't have the time to run a 20,000 person Discord for free all the time, and
Mhm.
so I kind of got inactive on that Discord and haven't really used it since. But right now everything is free. Right now all my info and all my analysis, and I put out threads on different companies, and I put out picks and day trades. I really trade every kind of way. I trade options, day trades, sympathy trades, large caps, small caps. So I put out those ideas for free right now. I am in a few weeks going to launch a 1,000 person lifetime hard cap room. So I don't want it to be over flooded with tens of thousands of people. I'm going to put some kind of requirements of some level of experience on there, and I'm going to make that a more intimate group where I provide more detailed ideas and thoughts, and how I'm thinking. Because I don't mind having a decent amount of followers now. I think I'm now a little over 90K, but it's nice to see people like your content and follow you. But the issue becomes like the bigger you get, the more crowded your plays become, and it kind of creates artificial price action and artificial wall breaks, artificial supports. Like it's hard to trade technically and skillfully when you have an overcrowded play like that. And so, I do want to have some plays that I'm providing to a tighter audience. So I will be launching that room soon. I'm going to make it very, very cheap. I don't know what the price is yet, but it's not going to be like $50, $100 a month, nothing like that. It's going to be a very cheap room, and it's going to be just very more intimate. People can ask me questions 24/7, stuff like that. So
Cool.
um, I'm working on launching that, but my Twitter content's completely free. All my alerts and picks are free, and they will be free forever. So
Okay.
That
Can I
sounds good.
Get
can
can
I
we
ask
get an
something?
OTC Club exclusive special for when you launch this room?
Yes.
oh yeah, for sure. I would love that. That'd be great.
Okay,
I
let
would
us
love that
know.
also.
Hey
Yeah.
Christine, I wanted to ask Stock, do will you be accepting Doge as payment?
Uh-oh.
That'd be accepted. That's funny. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll say all cryptos accept this payment. That'd be funny.
Ooh, that'd be
That's
cool.
beautiful. That is a great answer to that question.
So the coupon code could be OTC Club,
OTC Club.
guys. Yeah,
I love that.
OTC Club for Stock Talk Weekly's tight circle Dr. Stock Talk Weekly room.
Doctor Stock Talk Weekly.
You
That's so
are
funny.
officially forever Dr. Stock Talk Weekly. So when we
Yes.
comment on your post, you will be Dr. Stock
Yeah, I'm
Talk
gonna
Weekly.
beg, Doctor, what do you think about
People just start asking me medical questions on my
Right.
posts.
my knee
Stocks are
hurts?
good and everything, but I twisted
Yeah,
my ankle the
I'm
other
gonna need
day.
you to save some of my stocks this week, sir, because some of them are dying.
So Dr. Stock Talk Weekly. How important do you feel it is to diversify your portfolio? With doing both stocks and crypto or
I
anything.
think it's important to diversify, but I think that term is misunderstood by a lot of people. I think when some people think diversification, they think I have to own a lot of different stocks or a lot of different crypto. For me, diversification just means have exposure to different asset classes, right? Like have exposure to, if you're older and a little bit wealthier, have exposure to real estate, have exposure to business, have exposure to, Dow stocks, NASDAQ stocks, OTC stocks, crypto. Because when you have your hand in every bucket, you're much more likely to benefit from the explosions in the market, right? Like if there's one thing we know as people who've been trading is you can't time the market. You don't know when the trend is going to reverse and you're going to be in a 2 week downtrend. You don't know
Right.
when, and there's so many intricate government policy decisions that influence that too. It's just not predictable. So, when I talk about diversification, I mean find something you're bullish on and find a way to gain different types of exposure to it. Like example I can use is like electric vehicles, right? Like everybody and their mother now is bullish on electric vehicles. Every bank has turned bullish. Everybody's flipped their script, right? And so when people think, oh, I want to invest or trade in electric vehicles, they think, okay, let me go buy a bunch of different car makers, right? And that's a fine strategy. But the issue is like there's more than one way to gain exposure to a space. So let's say you're a person that's bullish on electric vehicles. Buying car makers isn't the only way to benefit from electric vehicles. What about lithium? What about cobalt? What about nickel? What about electric vehicle charging infrastructure? What about
Yeah.
batteries? What about grid infrastructure?
Mm-hmm.
What about transit vehicles versus consumer
Semiconductors.
vehicles?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many angles that you can play an industry on. So you can be bullish on an industry and you don't have to buy the actual companies that make the actual product, right? Like you can be bullish on technological hardware in the future, and semiconductors will benefit from that too. So there's always another angle to play something. And that's why I encourage people to be thoughtful. Like think about what you're bullish on, because everybody's bullish on different things, and that's what makes the market, is the subjectivity of like who thinks what is going up. And whatever you think is going up, or whatever industry you think is going to boom, find creative ways to play that industry, whether it's crypto, electric vehicles, space, gambling, sports betting and gambling has been another huge one. All these stocks have exploded, right? There's a million ways to play that. Play it with data, you can play it with physical casinos, you can play it with sports books, you can play it in so many ways. And so just be thoughtful and like think about why you're buying a stock or why you're buying a play. And it's so common on FinTwit for plays to be tied to the sector. Like when all these oil plays were heating up, everybody was like, this stock is going up because oil's going up. Okay, well, a lot of stuff would be going up because oil's going up, right? So like be creative.
All right,
Yeah.
doctor. That was a great
That was
answer.
a very doctor answer.
All right. So,
Yeah.
what was the biggest successes? Or well, you did tell us your biggest success, but I guess we'll go back to it. What was
Yeah,
your
I missed
biggest
it.
success? Yeah, she missed it because
I
her phone
missed it.
started updating.
Yeah.
But your
Apple.
biggest success and your biggest mistake that you have had trading in the past 10 years. What did you learn?
So I would say overall, my biggest success was Tesla because I've owned it for over 5 years. But I would say beyond that, my biggest one day trade was fun, which just happened last week.
Mm-hmm.
But I day trade a lot. So there've been a lot of wins, there've been a lot of losses. I would say my biggest loss, I'm trying to think, probably when I was dumping money into pot stocks in 2017, 2018. That's
You're
probably
not
when
the
all
first
those
person
stocks.
that said that.
Yeah, I lost a lot of money playing that weed stock bubble. And I know a lot of people that did too, but it taught me a lot of good lessons too. And people, it's good to learn and like come and like try to, acquire information and knowledge from people who have experience. That's great. I did that. I had mentors, trading mentors all the way through my journey. But that's effective to do. But the only real way to learn, because trading is so psychological, and like I emphasize this all the time, like anyone can learn technical analysis. If you go sit down for
Yes.
5 hours a day and read and watch YouTube videos and listen, like you're gonna learn it. It's not a matter of learning it. The matter is executing. Like execution is what sets everybody apart. And execution in trading is psychology. Like it's
Mm.
about not being greedy. It's about having discipline. It's about not being scared to cut a bag because it's opportunity cost that you're missing out on. Like so many people hold on to bags. Like I watch my friends even who hold on to bags for months and months and months. And then every time, they see another opportunity, they're like, oh, I don't have the capital to go after it. Well, what if you had? What if you had just cut that bag and put that capital into that play? Do you not think your money would have recovered more quickly than hoping for the bag to bounce? These are
Pre.
all psychological issues, right? And so
Christine.
you can't teach those things, and so that comes from experience and just
Mhm.
making mistakes. When you lose your ass, like when you lose 100 grand in a trade or something crazy, and you're like, fuck, that's when you learn, because you never want that feeling again. And you're like, okay, what did I
Exactly.
do wrong? Like, did I not set a stop loss? Was I just ignorant and kept buying the dip? Like, what did I do wrong? And so when you ask yourself those questions, you're going to learn, and you're not going to make those mistakes again. Like the best teacher in trading is getting your ass handed to you, in my opinion.
I have to
Absolutely.
agree with that
Yes.
because
I'll I'll
Yeah.
100% agree with that.
Yes.
And it's so true. And
Mhm.
you get people that say, well, I don't want to take the loss. I'm down 40%. It might come back. What are you praying for with that? Say you have 5 grand, you're down 10 grand. You're praying for
You're
that stock to go
praying.
up. I say, take that 5 grand and grab another one that you've just DD'd and make that money back. But people
Yeah.
psychologically are like, but no, it's not a loss
My
until you sell
bag.
it. That shit is so
Yeah,
ridiculous. So you nailed that, man.
I always call that the hold and hope strategy. You
Yeah,
know,
man.
like
Yeah.
that's so
Yeah.
stupid. Like you're holding and hoping while all these other plays are flying
Mhm.
you by, and you're like, oh, I wish I had more capital to put into that. I'm just holding 12 bags. Like, why? Cut them
No,
all.
no, I
And
Put
call
them
it
all
stocks,
in
I
one
call it
play.
the
yeah.
Gucci
So
bag
the
strategy.
holding and hoping, I hear that a lot. The holding and hoping, and I know that. Sorry, you guys, but a lot of people have that strategy, and yeah, it's just not a good thing. You
And
hoping,
it's also like you said, it's
hope doesn't make
psychology.
you money. You know,
It's a
hope doesn't
pride
make you
thing.
money.
People don't want to say, "Oh no, I'm going to take that loss." Take
Yeah.
that loss. You're not going to win every trade.
And people don't realize like a 50% bag requires 100% rebound to make
Mm-hmm.
back. So it's not
Oh
like your
God.
stock needs to go back up 50%. People don't get how percentages work. So
Uh,
it's also, that's interesting too to me. Like I see people that are holding a 50% bag saying it'll bounce back. And I'm like, what catalyst do you think is going to drive this stock
Oh,
100% up? You know?
uh,
And on the other side, it helps
yeah.
taxes, guys. Take the loss. Take the L.
take the
Yeah,
L.
I
yeah,
just
it
learned
really
that
does. No, it
recently.
really does. Because then
Yeah.
on your
Seriously.
next winner, you
Yep.
gotta deduct those losses
Totally.
from the gains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
See,
the
there you
moral
go.
of the story: is take this L.
Yeah.
The
Take
moral of
the
the
L for
story
your
is if any of you
taxes.
are in the audience holding a bag and you're limited on buying power, cut it. Just
Yep.
cut it.
Take the
And
L.
there's
Don't
no
I
near
don't care
term
what the reason you
catalyst
are
that's going
holding
to
the
make it
bag
go
is,
up.
just cut it.
Yeah.
Yo, doctor's orders, guys. Let's go.
There you go.
Not
Write a
financial
prescription for
advice.
that.
Not financial advice.
No,
Much
Write
respect.
a
I just want to say
doctor's
prescription.
one other
advice,
thing
sir.
too is I love that you were talking about your brother taking care of that, man. Much respect on that. I helped my family out, my mom as well. So respect on that one, man.
All
Yeah,
right.
man. I
So.
think like taking care of your family is so important. Like I tell people all the time, even if you don't have the means to do it, if you need
Mm-hmm.
to take care of them just by being there for them or being affectionate, being encouraging, taking care of your family doesn't mean you need to give them money. Just be like supportive. Like, and I understand that some people have complicated family problems, and I respect that. And there might be exceptions in some of those cases, but you know, if you don't have bad blood with your family, like there's no reason you shouldn't be encouraging and supporting and affectionate, and if you need to be monetarily supportive of them, whatever it may be.
That's so sweet. So I grew up with a big family, so yeah, I do that all the time. So I have a question. Congratulations, first of all, on your 90K followers. By the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
I didn't get you a gift though, but congratulations.
It's okay.
Can
Okay, I'll let it slide.
can you share with us some of your tips on growing such an amazing reach? Just a little bit of tips.
Yeah, for me, I'd been on Twitter on a personal account for
Hmm.
about 4 years. I didn't really even realize before that time that it was such a good community for learning stuff. And so, I'd followed some people, Pete Doom, Yates, some other guys that I'm still friends with. And, I'd followed them for a while. And last year, when I saw all this new retail influx coming in the market after the crash, I just saw so much nonsense on Twitter. Like, just people that didn't know what they were talking about, that were saying things that made like logically and financially no sense. And so I was like, you know what, maybe I'll give it a shot. And so last August I just made this account, and I basically just started tweeting ideas. Like I just started tweeting why I thought stocks were undervalued. My first big call, I guess, was before the stock split when Tesla was trading at $290 split adjusted. I told people that, retail involvement, everyone says stock splits don't matter because people say they don't change the company. And that's right, they don't change the company. But when people say stock splits don't matter, what they're overlooking again is psychology. When somebody goes to a stock and they see a stock price of $1,000, a retail investor, regardless of what the market cap is much less likely to invest in that stock than they are if the price per share is $100. And that's what Tesla did. And Apple's done it before, and big companies do it all the time because it gives the psychological ability for smaller traders and smaller accounts to be like, yeah, I can own a decent amount of shares in that stock. And so I'd said that was going to happen with Tesla, and it did. And then that got me like my first 1,000 followers, I would say. So it had nothing much had happened. But then, towards the end of last year, I made some good calls, and yeah, it just kept growing, word of mouth. I didn't do any like promotions or I don't do any like, people have offered to like pay me to promote products and stuff. I don't do any of that stuff. I just tweet ideas over and over again. And, I pride myself, I'm not comparing myself to other furus or whatever you want to call them, but, I pride myself on like my feed is very detailed. I'm not just, every once in a while I'll tweet a ticker with a GIF if we're banking on it and we are all making money and I'm having fun. I'll do that every once in a while. But most of my tweets are, very detailed. I give you like fundamental analysis on why I think the company's undervalued. I give you, technical analysis on what I think the next levels will be. So I try to be very detailed and try to provide like real information. And I think that's what's helped me grow because, a lot of people just provide like, I'm buying this or long this or, added this, and they don't give any context. And I think that's, by giving context and giving information that can help separate, if you are a person that's trying to provide picks or just got on Twitter and you want to grow a page, I think giving detail and giving information is the best way to do it because then you're giving people an opportunity to read that, become interested, and then go do their own research.
I love that.
I
I agree
agree.
with that. Yeah. So I want to get a little bit into your crypto as well. On your on your bio, you hashtag Bitcoin, and that was it. Are you a Bitcoin maxi?
Yeah, so I get to ask that a lot. So I actually would have a lot more cryptos tagged in my bio if we didn't have limited characters.
Mm.
But what I'll say about Bitcoin is, I've owned it for a long time. One of my good friends, one of my best friends, has been telling me to buy it for the last like 8 years, and he's been on it and he's made a fortune doing it. And thanks to him, I got some early, and I'm up massively on it. Like my average cost is like 11,000, so I'm up
Wow.
massively on it, and
Jeez.
um, because of him, really. And that's what I encourage people. Like if you have somebody you trust who's giving you ideas and they're really convicted on it, give it a second look. And I am bullish on Bitcoin. I would say I'm a little bit more bullish on Ethereum, but what I will say about
Yeah.
crypto is I think there is still a phase of realization that needs to happen with regard to what the government's role is going to be in the regulatory environment. And I don't think that has been fleshed out well enough yet. If I were to say one, I always try to do this where, people will say you're crazy for doing this because most furus just pump and pump and pump to the moon. But every idea I give, I try to give some level of risk assessment with regard to what the other side of the story could be. And with crypto, even though I am invested in it, it's not a huge percentage of my net worth, but I am decently invested in it. But my quote unquote negative outlook on it would be that I don't believe that the world governments are going to just like put their hands up and forfeit their control over the world money
Oh,
supply. you
yes.
know
That's facts. Yeah.
so I think there's going to be, I don't want to call it a fight, but I think there's going to be a regulatory upheaval in the next few years where world governments, especially the United States, China, Great Britain, the biggest economies of the world, Germany, who feel like their ability to control the money supply is endangered by the amount of money that's in crypto. I think that juncture is coming soon. And if governments can't print money and control the narrative of their currency in the country, it makes it very difficult for governments to react to economic problems with policy, right? Because when there's economic issues, whether it's a recession or COVID or whatever it was, the government is there, the money printers are there to react to the downturn in the economy and to support the economy. I'm not saying they do it correctly all the time. Like I think even in this last cycle, the government is massively overspent. The Fed is kind of losing track of their leash. I have a lot of criticisms of the way the inflationary manner in which it's managed, but I also do believe that it's necessary for the government to have the ability to support the economy. And I think that's what the global regulatory conversation is going to become. Like, will they forfeit their control over fiat to allow billions of people around the world to own crypto and create a decentralized exchange of wealth that they process everything through? Like if everyone starts paying for everything in Bitcoin, the U.S. government is not going to just roll over and be like, all right, y'all have fun.
No, not at all.
We wish. Oh, okay. So where do you see Bitcoin in the next 6 months? And after that, can you give us like your top, I don't know, top five? And I know you said you're bullish on Ethereum as well, but your top
Yeah.
five crypto?
I won't make a prediction on where I see Bitcoin in the next 5 months, but what I will say is that
Mm.
I think that it's becoming more of a conversation outside of the government side of are decentralized currencies becoming centralized because of whales, right? And what I mean by that is if you have 50 people who own 25% of all Bitcoin, let's say, and I don't know if that's the number, but I'm just using an example. Let's say you had 50 people that own 25% of all Bitcoin. Is that a decentralized currency anymore? Or
Right.
is it now just being controlled by a handful of people who own the majority of the float,
Right.
right? And people have seen this, especially in OTC or small caps. When a handful of players control the majority of the float, it becomes a very volatile asset, and it doesn't really become, this everybody's involved in supporting it kind of thing that the decentralized narrative says it's going to be. And so I think more than the government risk, there's a risk of, even if the governments don't get in the way, will the wealthiest people of the world be able to control these asset classes to the extent where they can control the price, dictate the volatility, and all of that? With regard to top five cryptos, I'd have to think on that. I trade a lot of I trade what's hot. I play the price action mostly.
Okay.
Out of
Hawk is a good one.
Yeah, I would say out of the top three that I'm invested in, I would say Bitcoin, Ethereum, and ADA.
Okay.
But top five would be hard just because I trade so many, and I even trade SHIB and Doge. Like Doge, I started buying Doge. I made almost 1,000% on as well because I was buying it so early. I did the
Heck
same
yeah.
thing with SHIB. I'm not big on that. These things are. I don't think that there's a fundamental value in SHIB or Doge, right? But I'm young enough
Oh.
to. I'm young enough to appreciate the power of this new meme economy, right? And we're seeing this in so many different ways. I was watching Shark Tank last night, for example, and this idea came up that this lady made these flower bouquets that people could store wine and beer inside of and drink out of at weddings.
Yummy.
Yeah, and so I was like, what a stupid idea. And she got 3 offers. And I was like, what the fuck? And so this kind of thing just makes me realize there is a real meme economy now. The boom of NFTs has showed you that. Again, I'm not against NFTs. I think there's a lot of great opportunities in NFTs. It's just art like any other art in my eyes. But there's
Right.
also the greater fool theory too, right? Like people just saying something is valuable, and then just pawning it off and pawning it off and pawning it off. And maybe it does have value if people are willing to pay it, right? Maybe that is just the definition of value. But just in my experience, I just need something more concrete to anchor my perception of value onto. And maybe I'm right or wrong about that, right? And maybe that's why it took my friend to push me into Bitcoin and Ethereum for that to happen. But what I will say is that if you're the kind of person that sits back and says, it's a meme, there's no value, blah blah blah, but you're ignoring the volume of trading that's going on, and you're ignoring the volume of hype and interest that's going on, then you're leaving money on the table. And you're leaving money on the
Exactly.
table because there's this really odd nonsensical perception that I see all the time that says if you trade more volatile assets or if you trade higher reward assets, the risk is inherently higher. No, the volatility is just higher. If you're controlling your risk on every single trade you take, if you're setting a defined risk on every single trade you take, then your risk is equal on every trade and your upside is all that changes. So, I'm not encouraging people to go for home runs, but I think that this is, this is not the same stock market we saw, all those years ago.
Yes.
This is not the same stock market we saw when everybody was concerned about what the fundamental value versus peers was. And not that people aren't concerned about that anymore. Institutional money and big money is always going to be, interested in that narrative. And there's always going to be smart money that wants a real cause to buy something. But as we saw last year, this was the biggest year ever for the opening of retail individual accounts. And not only at physical brokerages like it used to be in the past, where you'd have a financial advisor that manages your money, but people independently managing their money on their phone. And for people to say that this won't impact the climate of the markets for years to come is silly. Now you have millions of people who are making their own financial decisions with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, some people millions of dollars all around the country. And you don't expect memes and hype stocks to catch fire. They will, and they will continue to. And they've massively outperformed the rest of the market this year during the downturns. Like in the times this year where we've had downturns in the indices, or when you saw in March, when all of these SPACs and small caps tanked, there were still a handful of them in every sector that were running when they had the right narrative and the right hype. So we've created now, FinTwit has aided in this, Reddit has aided in this, social media at large has aided in this. But there's this new wave of retail sentiment that follows the trend. And call it FOMO if you will, but when people see an opportunity, this is what happened with DWAC last week and Fun last week. Why would those stocks run 2,000% in a day if it wasn't for hype,
Exactly.
right? In no fundamental justification would have justified those moves. If you were looking at DWAC fundamentally, right? If you were a fund manager and you're sitting there and you were like, there's no fundamentals in the investor sheet, there's no information provided. This is probably not going to be able to compete versus traditional social media. If you thought all of that stuff, you would have just missed a great trade, right? Because you weren't able to bring yourself to say there's enough hype to drive the stock higher. And sometimes that's all that matters. Stocks are just buyers and sellers. They're just tickers with a narrative. Yes, they have
That's
financials.
it.
Yes, they have fundamentals, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just a ticker with a story. Every stock is just a ticker with a story. If you think about it that way, you're going to be better off. I'm not discouraging people from doing research at all. I encourage you actually to
Mm-hmm.
do research so you can be more convicted, but don't be scared to play momentum. Just control your risk. Tell yourself before you get in, I'm not taking more than a 10% loss on this. If you tell yourself that, then you're not going to take a 10% loss. If you break your own rules and you do, then that's on you. But if you control your risk, you can take higher reward opportunities.
I
Tell
feel
them.
like we're at church right now, like stock
No, I
church.
feel like I do too. We're at this Dr. Stock Talk
Church.
Weekly, Reverend. Reverend Doctor
Amazing.
Stock Talk
I'm
Weekly.
loving this.
You just took us to Stock Church. But I wanted to comment on your NFT comment earlier because as you know, if you do not, we are all NFT fans up here. Midas Matt is getting into it. But I would challenge you to come on our show on Thursday and check out all the different projects that are going on. And also just to dig a little bit more into NFTs because NFTs are more than just art. You have HNFTs and all that. So I'm going to challenge you to come to our show on Thursday and just check out all the different
I
use
will. I will.
cases.
I'm not an NFT hater. I just always like to, spell out the limitations, right? Like I think it's important for people to keep, you know, keep things in mind with regard to what the downside could be, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. You'll be addicted.
JPEG Kings.
That goes to our next question. How do you prep for the market? Any music, exercise, anything?
You mean like on a day-to-day basis?
Yep, daily.
So there's a lot of things I do. So during the weekdays, I'm up every day religiously at 3 a.m. Central. So it depends on what time zone you're in. But yeah, so for me, I'm up when the pre-market opens. And so the reason I do that is I do a lot of scalp trading in pre-market. So what I'll do is I'll wake up early and I'll look for what are called volume pockets. So at 3 a.m. Central, hardly anyone's trading, right? The even on the most popular stocks, right? You might see them open at 50K volume, which is nothing. And so what you can immediately do is open up the level 2 and see, where is the bid enthusiasm and where is the ask enthusiasm? Like how far up are these asks starting and how willing are these bids to meet them? And you can see that and it's easier with more as you get more experience. But what I do is I study the level 2 data on all the stocks at pre-market open, and I decide if I believe there are going to be runners into the regular session. And so I do that based on volume pockets, and I study my watch list, and I'll add and remove names. I'll look at scanners for pre-market gainers. I'll read basically all the news in existence until market open. Like I just constantly have 4 screens running, and I'm reading as much as I can because in my eyes, like if you're up earlier than everyone else, then you can get the information earlier than everyone else. And not only can you read the information, you can make a decision based on the information earlier than everyone else. And I value being early. And so, a good example of this is last year when all the electric vehicle hype was going on, there's a company called Piedmont Lithium Corporation, PLL, and they announced a press release for a deal with Tesla at exactly 2:59 a.m. Central Monday morning. I instantly bought the stock at open at 3 a.m. and it blew up 300% within 20 minutes. So you can find news catalyst opportunities before everyone else if you're there on time, right? There's no way for you to know if big news is going to drop at 3 a.m. or 5 a.m. or 7 a.m. or 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. You don't know. So I beat that prediction by just being up the entire time. And some people may say like, oh, when do you sleep? Like, I sleep on weekends, and I'll do the rest of my sleeping when I'm dead. But for me, it's like I value being first, and I value outworking people, and so for me, that means being up every single day, 3 a.m. Central during the week.
Wow. What time do you go to sleep then?
Depends on how hot the market is, what plays are there. Like, if I do a couple pre-market scalps, and by 8:30 a.m. I've made enough money for the day, and I don't really see any other opportunities, like I'll just go to bed.
Oh, okay.
I do it very on the fly. It just depends on how the day has gone so far, what opportunities I'm seeing, how hot the market is, what the indices are doing, well, a bunch of things.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. Okay, so what advice do you have for any new traders and then obviously seasoned traders?
So for new traders, I mean, I could go on the off on that topic for like an hour. I'll try to keep it concise. For new traders, I encourage you to explore different types of trades. So, a big thing that the new traders get caught into is they'll come into the market and they'll have success trading something, whether it's OTC, options, small caps, whatever it is. They'll have success trading an asset class, and then they pigeonhole themselves to that asset class. They're like, I'm not going to trade anything else. I'm just going to trade small caps. I'm just going to trade, swing plays or sympathy trades or OTC or options or day trades, whatever style you're doing. I started that way initially as well. I pigeonholed myself and I traded a particular type of way and I did it every time. There's nothing wrong with having a strategy, but when you expose yourself to other types of trading, you better assess like what am I the best at, and what I found out over the course of the years was that like I was really good at sympathy trading. And so for those who don't know what that is, sympathy trading is basically when you see a blockbuster runner or like a primary runner or a stock that's just stealing all the attention, all the volume, it's on the top of all the gainers lists, and then you go and find sympathies to that stock because what you have is volume spillover. So when you have that much volume, unusual volume going into a stock, there's always volume spillover and there's always sympathy runners. Always. Like not sometimes, always. It's sometimes they run 10% the sympathies, sometimes they run 2000% like fun, right? So it just depends on what the play is, but there's always an opportunity to be found as a sympathy trade. So that's kind of become my bread and butter outside of pre-market scalping. And I do a lot of fundamental trades too. So by fundamental trades, I don't mean like investments. I mean, I find a play in a sector and I then see what its peers are valued at, and I see if it deserves a higher multiple. And if I think it does, then I buy it and I wait, right? Because those are not the kind of trades that you can predict with a technical setup. Yes, you want to have an entry near a relative bottom, but those aren't the kind of trades you can predict with a technical setup. You need to wait for the market to see the fundamental value, right? So, like a great example of this was RDW, which is I've been pounding the table on for a while. It was in the eights a couple weeks ago, and I was telling people, "Hey, it's undervalued, it's undervalued, it's undervalued, it's undervalued," like almost every day. And then I tweeted a thread, and now it's trading at like 12 something. And so, those kind of moves can happen, and those are easy trades to make. And those are the kind of trades that you can sleep easy at night, holding overnight, holding over a week. Like I like having some of those trades in my basket because I can put more capital into them. I can allocate a larger position size. I don't have to scale in as deliberately. and I can just wait for my conviction to be realized. And sometimes it doesn't happen. But again, if you control your risks, you're out of that trade and on to the next one anyway. So that's for new traders. For experienced traders, I would say that I still learn something every day. So, I think that that's something, there's a lot of like arrogance on FinTwit with regard to like, I don't miss, or I haven't had a green day, I haven't had a red day ever, like there's a lot of that on FinTwit. And so if you're an experienced trader, whether you have 10, 20, 30, 40 years of experience, just remind yourself that like you still have things to learn as well, and you can still make mistakes and analyze your mistakes and learn different styles, like learn different approaches to the market, learn about different asset classes, like just be a learner regardless of your experience level would be my advice to experienced traders.
Amazing. Thank you. And now we have our panel. If you guys have any questions, let's do that. And then we'll get to the audience. Matt?
Hey, yeah, no, not any crucial questions, but I'm just soaking all this in, just like real talk here and knowledge. That's amazing. I went through your thread previously. I know you're a lot of big boards, and what I was writing down is I'm making a list of traders that I will follow when I make that jump to big boards. And you'll be one of them, 100%. I totally agree on the psychology aspect. Any stock can be traded. Doesn't matter what it is. Fundamentals not, and the memes, the Momo, the momentum, all that stuff is so true. So respect, man. I love it all. Thank you.
All
Yeah,
right.
man, I appreciate that.
Doll?
So the question I had was, what would someone include in? What would you recommend someone include in their trading plan?
With regard to what?
To trading, to just what plan? Like what things would you include in your trading plan, or what would you recommend?
Um,
Like,
so one thing I would say, one simple thing that people can
mhm.
do is make a master watch list. So that's what I call it. So master watch list is basically a watch list divided by sectors. So, and you can do this in OTC, you can do this in big boards, whatever you want. Make a watch list organized by sectors. So, electric vehicles, sports books, biotech, semiconductors, whatever you want. You make a bunch of different sectors that you're interested in, and you fill them with 5 to 10 stocks. You don't want to be more than 10 because then you're just losing the purpose of a watch list. But fill them with 5 to 10 stocks each. You can rotate those names out. But these are names that you like, the price action you're familiar with. The catalyst you're familiar with. You're familiar with the general financial makeup of these companies. You want this to be a basket of stocks that you're familiar with, and then watch that basket of stocks every day, and you'll notice patterns. How do these stocks move on volume influxes? How do they move relative to peers? When one stock is running in this sector, do the other ones run with it, or do they just stay flat? When one stock is running in this sector, the other ones go down as competitors. That's another thing that happens sometimes. Like, observe trends in a basket of stocks. I call it a master watch list. You can call it whatever you want. Call it your, I don't know, call it whatever you want. Call it your bucket of happiness. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But it's just basically a group of stocks that you're familiar with, price action wise, fundamentally, in terms of the management, in terms of the history, in terms of their dilution history, in terms of their, fundraise, everything. You want to know relatively everything about these companies. And you'll realize very quickly you don't need to trade a new ticker every day. And that's another myth on FinTwit. You have to trade a new ticker every day. You don't. You can make a living trading 10 tickers for the rest of your life if you know them well enough. If you know the price action well enough, you know how they move well enough. You can make scalps at key supports. You can make sells at key resistances. You can generate capital consistently trading a handful of names instead of occupying yourself with finding a brand new name every single day. It's just not necessary. I do trade new names every other week or every week or so. That's more so because I'm just constantly looking at the news and looking at opportunities. But just know that you don't have to do that, is what I'm saying. You can, but you don't have to. I know guys who make a living trading 3 stocks and they just day trade them and swing trade them over and over again repetitively. And so, yeah, just don't force yourself to be like, I need a new play every single day. And that also ties into not forcing yourself to trade. There are some days where you don't need to make a trade. Even as a person myself who trades full time and trades all day every day, there are days where I don't even make a trade. There have been weeks where I haven't made a trade. So, just know that you can sit on your cash and be patient for really quality opportunities. Because the other thing is, if you rush into a play that you feel like, you have a mild level of conviction on and you feel like could be a runner, and then a week later, a high conviction play pops up for you, you don't have the capital to deploy to that play that you wanted to initially. And so there's a lot of different reasons, but opportunity cost is one of the biggest ones. Not enough people think of opportunity cost. Opportunity cost, in the simplest way to put it for people who don't understand it, is when you have money sitting in something that's either going down or not moving, it is almost always better allocated in a new opportunity. Because when you're, like I said earlier, when you're holding a 50% bag, you need 100% move from that stock to justify that. And most likely, if you're holding a minus 50% bag, you A, didn't manage risk. B, the volume is probably gone. So your chances of a plus 100% rebound have become minimal. And there's always new plays. So for you to take that capital out and reallocate it to a new play is going to serve you much better in terms of recovering your lost money than it is just sitting there and holding and hoping.
That is wonderful advice. Thank you for answering my question.
You're so detailed, like in your answers. It's crazy. Like I'm a number one
Doctor.
fan now, and I'm gonna sign up for your freaking launch that you have, and I'm just gonna be there all the time.
I
But
appreciate
for
that.
the audience,
Darling investor. Hi.
Hello. Hey, the question I have as a follow-up is, I'm a big believer in SoFi. SoFi has a similar technology with Galileo, which competes with Makita. And Makita itself is at 14 billion, and SoFi is at 16. So with 2.5 billion cash removed out, I so I'm personally bullish. I have a lot of stake in it. So what is your guidance here? Because I'm more a little bit more emotional on this because I feel it is undervalued at 16 billion and
Okay,
Chime
yeah.
is valued at 40 billion.
So I like SoFi. I've been I have a decent amount of it in my long term account. My cost average is around 13, so I have a decent cost average on it. I like it. I'm bullish on it because of the bank charter as well. What I would encourage you to do, though, I know you said you're emotional because you feel like it's undervalued. Regardless of what you think of the company, don't be emotional about it. So if tomorrow, or if the bank charter news sends the stock 100% higher, take profits because like not on the whole position, but like take some profits always on big moves. So what I tell, newer traders is trim into strength and add on weakness on your high conviction plays. So if you repeatedly do this, and you don't have to forfeit your entire core position to do this, if you're very bullish on a position over the medium to long term and you don't want to give up your core cost basis, that's okay. What you should do is parcelize your position. So this is what I do. So separate your position. Let's say you have a 5,000 share position. You now allocate that into 5 1,000 share parcels. And every time you see unusual strength of the chart or the stock, you trim a parcel. You see what I mean? And then you move on, and that way you're preventing yourself from missing out because the whole FOMO thing and the psychology thing, the reason people get caught up in that is either A, they're not involved in the play and they see everyone else banking on it and they think, I really want to get into that. I have to buy it, and they buy it at any price and they, screw up. And so if you don't do that and you're another person who sold the position in the stock and now you keep seeing the stock go up, a lot of people's first reaction is, God, I want to buy back in. I knew it was going to keep going up. If you start with a core position and then shave your peripheral position into strength, you will never have that emotion because you'll always still be involved in the play. And so this is only for high conviction positions, by the way. Do not do this with every position. You don't want a core in every trade because if you put a core in every trade, you're going to be stuck in every trade you ever take. You want this for positions where you feel like over the mid to long term, they're going to appreciate rapidly. And those are the kind of positions you want to play like that.
amazing. Thank you. Flip, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Stock Talk Weekly, how did you play fun exactly? I know I was in your space with Gavin or the night before it ran. I was just wondering how you played it, how you scaled out of it, and just kind of wondering how you played it exactly. Your own pick.
Yeah, so what I did was I loaded it in two accounts when I first saw the news because once I saw that connection, I was like, this is a good enough connection that this will run. It was one of those like gut feelings for me where I was like, this is going to run. I don't know how much, but it's going to. So put it in two accounts initially. One position size was much bigger than the other. The first day when it ran 100%, I trimmed out 30% of my position on one account. Then the next day, when I woke up pre-market, it was up 200% pre-market. I sold the other batch in that second account. So my main position was still there. As that volume ramp up came and it kept going in pre-market, I trimmed three more times. So I trimmed at plus 550, plus 715, and then my last two trims were between plus 1200% and plus 1600%. So those last two sells were my big sells that made me the big money on that play. But people thought that I sold the absolute plus 2000% top. Of course not. No one's going to perfectly time that. I didn't know it was going to run to 24, right? But my last two sells were up 1,200 to 1,600% each. And so that more than made it a monster play for me. But yeah, I scaled out through pre-market and then into the volume burst at the session open because once pre-market was getting to the last 2 hours, I was watching the volume and I knew it was going to surge because it was already setting volume records in pre-market, which is so rare. Like, for at 5 a.m. for a stock to be hitting yearly volume records, I knew that the market was going to bring another 200, 300 million volume at market open. That's why I left those two big parcels in my main position. And so that's a rough overview of how I played it.
Who do we have next? Arthur Alien?
I have a question for Stock Talk.
Okay.
What's your question, sir?
No, he does not have a question for me.
I know. I was like,
Trolling.
he doesn't have a question.
Why did y'all put him up here?
No, he has a question.
Stock Talks on Friday. I went all in on two stocks. So I bought D-Walk at 175 and Fun at 24. Like I sold everything. God. I sold my dog, his kidney, and I bought this. Like, what do I do now?
Oh my god! I'm sorry you sold your dog, Greg. That's
no. I sold his kidney, dude.
Oh my god!
To buy Fun.
Oh my god! Enough of you.
Oh man.
Enough.
No, in all seriousness though, I got DMs on the day that Fun, corrected, and people were texting me that they bought it at 18. And I'm like, what logic? But like, you guys, this is the thing. Like, I'm not saying that volatile plays aren't going to dump. They are going to dump. But I was not the one who caused that dump. Like, in all fairness, like, it was not me alone selling my position that caused that. Okay, you have to understand.
No, everyone he dumped on us.
No, shut up. Okay, listen. But this is just a general rule of thumb. If I tell you about a play, okay, when I alerted Fun, I said added at $1.10. Okay. If the next morning the stock is trading at $18, 1,800% higher, why the hell would you buy it? Like, you missed the play, just write it off, right? So, like, these are the kind of things, like, I'm not trashing on new traders, but, like, it's really annoying for me when I call a 2,000% overnight play and then people come to me and say they bought it at the top. Like, why? If you didn't get it the day before, why chase it at that price? So, like, don't do this. If you're a new trader and you're seeing plays be called and the next day they're up 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000%, why are you buying at those prices? The guys who are selling you those shares bought it the day before at $1, right? So just apply a little bit of logic, please, if you're taking these plays. Apply a little bit of logic and understand.
Going to 16 on a share?
No, nothing's going to 16 on a share.
So should I sell at $1 tomorrow and take a 90% hit? What do I do?
Okay.
I need help.
Mute Gerg now because he's just trolling. If you have the actual
just Gerg. Gerg is the only person that can sell.
So okay, so let's see. Delist, what's up?
Hey, what's up? I was just, anyone can answer this, I guess, but just seeing when would be the right time for a beginning swing trader to get into options.
Go ahead, Stock Talk.
So you beginner in what degree? Like how long have you been trading?
Say about 6-7 months now.
Okay, so you're like a new COVID trader.
Yeah, pretty much. Plus, if you haven't noticed, I right click and save and flip JPEGs, so that's been helping out as well.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So that's
that's
yeah. So you made good money off that, I imagine. So
yep.
okay. Well, this is what I'll say about options trading. Everybody's ready at a different juncture. Options trading is great. I use options mainly for either bounce plays or overreactions. So um, bounce plays I mean by like if I feel like a stock is oversold off a catalyst, and then I'll buy calls at the bottom and bounce it, or if I feel like a stock is massively overbought with no good reason and it needs to go down, then I'll buy long dated puts. But that's mostly when I trade options. I usually my primary way of trading is I swing equity in very large size. So because for me, I sleep easier at night that way. I have the ability to average down constantly. You typically equities are a lot less volatile than options, typically, not always. But so that's the general way I play it. If you're looking to when you should get into it, my answer to you would be when you're ready. And what I mean by that is go learn. Whether it's on YouTube, reading a book, listening to a technical analysis spaces, whatever it is, go learn about different indicators, how to use them, when not to use them, how to combine them, and then look at actual options information. Look at what all the Greeks mean. Understand what they all mean. Understand how they vary by contract. Understand that in most options contracts, the bid ask spread is wider than it typically is on equities that are trading in the regular session. So options contract purchasing is a lot more negotiable than equity trading generally. You can almost, if you have enough size, force down, the bids to the price you want them at. Sorry, the asks to the price you want them at. And so there's a lot of different strategies you can take with regard to getting better entries or worse entries with options. I've had people who found winning options plays, but they just bought the contracts at too high of a price and it prevented them from making money, right? Or they bought them when all the volatility was already sucked out of the contract, prevented them from making money. And as you get more experience, you can do things like straddles and butterflies and iron condors. You can learn about different strategies where you can mitigate your downside, while also capping your upside if you're just looking for a reaction to a catalyst or a reaction to something and you don't want to get your ass handed to you if you're wrong. Those controlled risk strategies are good in that environment. But back to what I was saying, my advice to you with regard to when you should start is when you feel like you're ready. And a way to assess that you're ready is play contracts with very small size. Okay. Just a couple $100 at a time. Play them with small size. The reason I say to do that rather than paper trade is because it allows you to have the psychological aspect of losing money, which is important because you want to have risk on the table or else you're not going to act psychologically how you would, right? Like I see people who paper trade, and obviously in paper trading, you're just going to let everything run. You have no real risk. You don't care if it corrects another 80%, whatever. It's not even real money, right? So if you trade, it's much more effective in my experience to learn to trade by allocating small amounts of capital so you can feel the pinch, right? You can feel the needle poke if you're wrong. So you at least have some psychological burden, but at the same time you can practice if your methods work and if your options plays are generating returns, then you can start using bigger size. But first learn the Greeks, learn how options work, learn about how different the bid ask spreads are compared to equities. Learn about a lot of options will only go in 5-cent increments or 10-cent increments. Learn about those incremental bid asks. There's so many things to learn about. So once you get a better handle on it, practice with small size, confirm that your strategy works, and then try it with bigger size. But it's a different time frame for everybody. Not everybody is ready for options at the same time.
Amazing. Donnie, do you have a question?
Oh wow. Yeah, I think I've been in here a little bit. I didn't even realize.
Hey,
Um,
hey, Donnie.
Yo, Stock Talk. Just found you on Thursday, I think, under Gavin's chat. Congrats on the fun trade. I was in there when you called it, and I'm still under PDT, and I haven't even moved from cash to margin yet, just because I'm still learning so much, and I'm trying to keep myself behaving. So I wasn't able to get in fun because I was still under cash settlement. I was curious. I'm about to switch over to margin. So I'll have more day trades per week, and I won't have to worry about the settlement. But having only 3 day trades per week, is there a strategy you like to use in finding plays in aftermarket? I know you say you do a lot of things in the pre-market.
Yeah, so in my experience, it's easier to do in pre-market because you have what's called a volume ramp going into the regular session, right? So you can better predict which stocks are going to see, unusual volume at market open. After hours, I do trade as well. I mostly trade after hours for potential continuation of regular session runners. So if I see a regular session runner that has, really, really high volume, really high bid enthusiasm. I see the asks keep pulling back headed into the close. Those are all good indicators to me that you're going to see another 5 to 20% pop in the after hours. So when I see a big regular session runner, maybe that I missed out on, or that I want to scalp a little bit. If I see that those asks getting pulled back, and what by that mean is if you look at the level 2 data and you see the asks jumping up, 10 cents at a time, that shows that the sellers are expecting a continuation and they want a higher bid going into the close. And it doesn't always work, right? So always control your risk, but it doesn't always work. But it works for me very often because I have the experience of being able to monitor that level 2 data. With regard to what you're saying about having limited day trades, uh, you know, most of the money that I've made has been on multi-day runners in my career. But, I have made good money on day trades and I do day trade regularly. I wouldn't get too caught up in the limitability of your day trades. Kind of tailor your strategy to the fact that, hey, I can't get in and out of every play I take, depending on how actively you're trading. Again, I don't know how actively you're trading, but depending on how actively you're trading, when you have a PDT limit, that you can't fluidly get in and out of every position. So you want to take higher conviction positions, and you want to take positions that if you do get put into a situation where you can't sell out, a play that you're comfortable holding overnight. And there's a lot of ways to dictate something you'd be comfortable with overnight, depending on, the technical setup. Did it close at a key support? You can look at the volume trend. Is it on an unusual volume uptrend? Is this a volume peak? Has it peaked and now we're on the de-escalating volume withdrawal that comes after a peak? There's a lot of ways to see if you expect continuation. And again, nothing is foolproof, right? If there was any foolproof strategy to guarantee continuation or guarantee after hours runners, we'd all be billionaires. So these are just best guesses based on available data. But yeah, just I wouldn't get overoccupied with your day trade limit yet until you're above it. For now, just tailor your strategy to being able to sleep at night if you have to hold a play overnight.
All right. And now we have Mark.
Stock Talk, you are a monster. I've started following you and Gurgavin on Thursday. I listened to at least 12 hours of your guys' conversation on DWAC and or DWAC and fun. You've got a lot of knowledge that you like to spread with the community. I think that's great. I was wondering if you have any insight on U.S. multi-state operators in cannabis in the OTC boards. That's all.
I haven't really paid as much attention to cannabis stocks this year as I should have. I played, a couple of the names on hype on the big boards, on the runs, but I didn't play it I haven't been keeping track of developments in cannabis stocks as much this year. I've been more so involved with like sports betting stocks, electric vehicle stocks, semiconductor stocks, even space stocks recently I've been getting into. So when I'm like deep diving in industry and really looking for plays, I kind of get, I don't want to say horse blinders, but I get really hyper focused. And so, some of the news and developments in other industries kind of passes me by. So I don't want to mislead you with regard to giving you an analysis of U.S. multi-state operators and OTC picks, and I don't want to mislead you, but what I will say is, for me, I don't think you're going to see a real parabolic move in those stocks until we get closer to legitimate potential for legalization, and I don't think we're there yet. I don't feel like it's at the top of the Biden administration's agenda. They haven't really, emphasized it enough. Of course, Schumer, Booker, and a couple others are in favor of it and have drafted legislations, but the House legislation, the Senate legislation are, very much different. And as we know, they have to get on the same page before anything can happen. So I think it's going to be another year and a half till we see the real bull market for pot stocks. And that's when I think you're going to see parabolic moves, not only in the OTC ones, but the big board ones as well. These stocks have a history of parabolic moves. It's because, cannabis is one of those industries where just a lot of people are bullish on it, and they can see, the potential for full US adoption, federal adoption. And I completely agree that there's a fundamental story there. And I think people, there's a real opportunity for when that does happen. I just think policy wise, we're pretty far from that juncture. So if you're going to see volume inflows, I'm not sure this is the right time to forfeit opportunity costs to hold cannabis stocks. I'm not sure that it is. I don't have any in my portfolio currently.
All right. Thank you. And now we have David Miller.
Hey, Stock Talk. Appreciate all your posts, man. You're great. When you post, when you talk about your best guess, like a 10 bagger, your Google, your Home Depot, I remember you posted about IONQ, and before it became an IPO, you posted, "Does anyone know about quantum computing?" Which I thought was odd for you. Like you're generally so knowledgeable. You do your own research, and that really piqued my interest. Do you see there is another 10 bagger better opportunity than IONQ right now? Like, how high up is that on your list?
So IONQ isn't a trade for me. I put it into my long-term account, and I don't plan on looking at it for years. I think quantum computing, we're getting to a juncture now where, like, if you look at the transfer or the upgrade of our society to a technological society, it started with hardware, right? It started with cell phones and Apple watches and laptops and all these like hardware is always where a technological advancement starts. And now, as we've seen over the course of the last 10 years, all the biggest companies in the world, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Apple, they're all becoming software companies now. And that's because, I think in the next 10 years, computer efficiency is going to be the number one differentiator between the success of businesses. And I don't mean in one sector. I mean in the financial industry, algorithms to predict, the same algos that they run today, except 50 to 1,000 times more efficient with quantum computing. I'm talking about logistics networks. I'm talking about every single type of business you can think of can benefit from more efficient computing. And that to me is what quantum computing is for. So IonQ, I don't know what's going to happen. It could go to $6. It could go to $3. It could go to $20. I'm not predicting the price on that. And it's not a trade for me. I'm not trading it at all. I'm accumulating shares and selling calls against them. That's all I'm doing, because it's a position for me that I think in 5 years, people are going to laugh that they could have bought it for $10. That's my view on it.
Nice. And now we have Black Sauce. What's up, Black Sauce? All right, I'm going to go to the next because you have a bunch of questions. Ibrahim or Ibrahim?
Hey, how's everybody going?
Good.
Hope everyone's doing well. I want to start off, I really appreciate your guys' calls and space calls. It's really awesome, and you get the information that you guys spread out. It's honestly awesome, because for me, it's like it's really hard to find this kind of information when you're like all alone looking around, especially like when your circle is like most people like, oh, I'm not really into the stock market. I'm not really into that stuff. I don't know how that stuff works. It's all a gamble. When it's really not a gamble if you do your search and you do your due diligence and you do the right due diligence. But my question is, like, for Girk, is just what platform do you use? Because I am in Toronto as well. So I'm just wondering, what platform do you use? Right now I'm using
If you live in
TD.
Canada, move to IBKR. No questions.
Wait, which one?
Facts.
IBKR.
IBDR?
Interactive Brokers. No, IB.
Interactive
Interactive
brokers.
Brokers. Okay. Because right now I use Questrade, and
I think
it's
Questrade, they charge $695, and you can trade from, I think, 8 a.m. to 6 a.m., right? 6 p.m., right?
Yeah.
You don't get the entire hours. But with
Yeah.
IBKR, let's see, you buy 100 shares, you pay, I think, $1 each, and you can buy from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. So.
Oh, okay, that's blessed. Yeah, because I was listening to you. You were trading DWAC, and like you were trading after hours. I was like, yo, this guy's like all the way in. I was like, man, yo, I'm missing out. Like,
even the customer service sucks for Questrade. Like IBKR, if you have a certain account size, they give you a person to like contract. Like you can just call them up. a drug person. So
Okay, that's blessed. That's blessed. All right, that's
yeah,
pretty much my
Questrade
questions, guys.
sucks. Move out of there. Even
Yeah.
the app for Questrade like 40 years old.
Oh
The
man, it's
app is trash.
garbage.
Yeah.
It's absolutely trash.
Your Questrade is
Yeah.
old. Amber, do you have a question? Can we go to Amber? Her hand
All
is
right.
up.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hey, so I just wanted to say thank you so much for having this space. It's super awesome. I'm definitely a new investor, and so I'm sorry if you guys have went over this, but I'm just curious, like, what is your best approach as being a small account investor? Because I find a lot of these guys I'm following, they have a ton of money, and when you see them bid on like, $5,000, $10,000, they make like huge money off of it. Whereas if I only bet like, maybe 500 or 1,000 here, it's only going to be like a couple $100. So I got about 8,000 to invest, and I'm just trying to think of like what my best strategy is. Do I diversify that? Do I maybe put 2 grand in each kind of stock? Like I'm just kind of really struggling with what I should do as a small account investor.
I mean, it just really depends on what your goals are, right? Like, so you're basically,
Did you understand that?
you're basically saying like it bothers you that other people are making like home run hits with less money.
Yeah.
Okay. And I understand that. And that's really common, it's, you have to kind of just like isolate yourself from expectations, especially on FinTwit. Like on FinTwit, there's so many people posting $1 million trades every day, right? And like you're not going to be able to compete with that with an account with a few $1,000s, And that's nothing against you. It's just that you, by expecting yourself to make $1 million trade with a $10,000 account, it's just not going to happen unless you make the trade of the year, right? And so, and even then, even if you make the trade of the year, that would be a crazy return. So, you have to allocate positions on, I would start honestly by just allocating positions on what you're interested in. And by what I mean you're interested in is what you're personally bullish on. So, stocks or crypto or whatever it is, find a few that you really believe in, believe in the narrative story, believe in the fundamental story, the chart looks good to you, and if you're not good at charting, go learn about charting, learn about technical analysis, learn about supply and demand zones, support and resistances, key levels, MACD, RSI, volume weighted
Hello.
average price, so you can go learn about these things and then leverage your knowledge to let you grow your account. But know this, that consistently making base hits, so base hits can be a 5% gain, 20% gain, 50% gain, however you define it. Know that making base hits, taking the money out, that's called compounding if you continually reinvest it into new plays. And you can grow your account much more quickly by doing it that way with controlled risk than you will by swinging for home runs and missing, right? So that to me is the best advice on how to grow a small account. Take base hits and don't get occupied in the dollar gain. Focus on your percentage gains. If you're making 20 to 50% a trade, you may think that's shitty based on all the 1,000% runners on FinTwit. It's not. 20 to 50% base hits over and over and over again will grow your account so fast you won't even realize.
Amazing. That's truth. Andrew?
Yes. Thank all you guys. Thank you, hosts, for the time. Stock Talk Weekly. Awesome session. I'm also super new. Just really started. I've been kind of value trading and holding long on companies I believed in for a few years, but now really trying to get into swing and high conviction swinging and a little bit a day, but I don't have the confidence. I really just started like getting into it this month. So my question is really about price targets. And so, I'm new in the game and just, please, your experience of 10 years, what would you give a super new trader really started this month on swinging and swing trading and looking at the narrative? Really, I'm investing a lot of time in technical and fundamental. I have entrepreneur background, so I'm decent with financials, understanding mergers, acquisitions, kinds of things, catalysts. But I'm really kind of trying to learn on price targets, entries, exits, comparables in the sector. What tips or 10-year experience can you give me on forming price targets for
So you're
planning my
basically saying
lists?
like you're basically wondering how to form your own price targets. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, my watch
Okay.
lists and the plays I'm interested in. I have my sector lists actually, and yeah, form my own price targets and my
Yeah.
entries, exits, scaling in out plans, kind of thing.
Okay. So this is what I can tell you. So stocks obviously cover companies, and the market capitalization of a stock is reflective of the value of the company. Obviously, you know that. When banks are giving price targets, right, they're always giving some kind of fundamentally analytical narrative for why the company should be worth that much, right? So if a company at $10 is trading at a 10 billion market cap, right, and you want it or think it should go to $20, you then have to understand that you would have to double the market cap. So, if a $10 stock runs to $20 and at 10 billion you were wondering, hey, is this company worth 10 billion? And now 100% later the company's worth 20 billion. You have to ask yourself the question fundamentally, is this company justified to be worth this much? Sometimes this doesn't even work, right? Sometimes the stock continues to run, and that can be for a number of reasons. It can be because of float structure, like we saw with GME and GameStop, right? That kept going. GameStop got worth way more than it's actually worth from a fundamental and analytical perspective, and that can happen because technicals, the chart and the movement of the price is mostly independent of the stock and the fundamental narrative. Now, the bigger the stock gets, the more fundamentally driven the narrative becomes because the big money comes into it and they dictate the price action. And big money and funds are always going to be interested in the fundamental justification for the position. Is the position, a value position is the phrase they use. So when it comes to generating your own price targets, which was your question, that's difficult for me to say because I don't personally do that, right? In my mind, what I set are profit targets, not price targets, because I don't trade stocks just to be perfectly on the nose analytically when it comes to the fundamentals. I trade stocks to make money. And I think most people do that. They trade stocks to make money. And so if you're trading stocks to make money, what's more important than a price target for the value of the stock is a profit target for when you're satisfied to get out of the trade or call the company overvalued. And so it's more so a general thing. An example I use is RDW, Redwire Space, is a company I'm very bullish on. It was worth 600 million at the deal, and now I think it's up to 12, so it's worth 20% more than that. But for me, I felt analytically, based on the research that I did, that company was worth 2 to 4 billion dollars. So based on that analysis of my own personal analysis, which could be right or wrong, I then said, okay, there is massive upside for this stock in the stock price because the market cap isn't anywhere near where it should be, right? And now it started that trend up. Will it continue? I don't know. But to be responsible, I scale into strength on the way, reduce my core size. And then if it keeps going, if it goes to $30, $40 instead, great. I'll keep my core because I always keep a core with a fundamental play. If you have fundamental conviction in stock, you keep a core. And, by setting price targets for yourself, I think, anybody who does that, unless you're a fund with a team of quants and a team of analysts behind you, like most of these banks have, you're at a disadvantage. You're not going to be able to get to as specific or as justified of a price target as, Morgan Stanley will with a desk of 50 guys analyzing the stock. So by doing that, by putting the burden on yourself to create a price target for a stock, you're putting yourself at an inherent disadvantage. What you should instead do is come up with you think is a general value of the stock. And if it's significantly higher than where it's trading now, then you have an upside trade on your hands. And if you want to take the technicals out of it, if you're just a fundamentals person, that's the way to do it fundamentally. Find what you think is undervalued. And for people who say, how do I know that a company's undervalued? There's a number of ways you can do that. You can look at their revenues versus their market cap. That's the most basic way to do it. That's one of the most popular, hey, their price to sales ratio is just really low, right? And that's a very common way to do it. You can also look at price to profit ratio. You can look at, price. There's so many different ratios you can look at to break it down financially. But you can also look at what are the peers trading at. So if you're looking at an industry where, I can use an example like sports books, okay? You're looking at DraftKings, Penn National, RSI, all these different sports books, right? MGM, all these different companies that do roughly the same thing. And when you're looking at their valuations, look at their run rates. How much revenue are the sportsbooks bringing in? What margin are they spending on marketing and advertising to acquire those customers? How long are they retaining the customers? If you look at a few key data points like that, you can quickly come up with a narrative and say, this stock is fundamentally undervalued versus its peers, and the market should take note of that, right? The market's not efficient. It takes a while for the market to catch on to fundamental narratives and catch on undervalued plays. The volume isn't going to come the day after you buy it. You're not going to buy a stock and then tomorrow everybody's going to be like, "Oh yeah, he's so right. It's undervalued," and they're all going to go buy it. That's never going to happen. You have to dig in a position into a convicted area where you think this stock's undervalued versus peers, undervalued just on the balance sheet, or undervalued because of some technological or intellectual property advantage, which is otherwise referred to as a moat. So look for moats, look for fundamental value on paper, and look for fundamental value versus peers. If you're not looking at the chart, those are the three ways to find the plays.
You're ridiculous, Dr. Stock Talk Weekly. I'm just going to say that. JMJ, PB's mom, you ready?
Hey guys, how are you?
You're forever known as PB.
Always, always. How are you guys
JMJ,
tonight?
we love you and your whole family.
We love you guys. I just have to say, this is the best OTC club I've ever heard thus far. And I want to say thank you to Dahl and Christine for hosting the OTC club, because I can't even tell you how blessed we are to have this club to learn from, like, all these amazing traders. And this, like, thus far, Stock Talk has been my ultimate favorite. The amount of notes that I'm going to send in our Telegram tomorrow, I can't even tell you guys. I have them all jotted down. Thank you so much, Stock Talk. I have learned so much in this. I don't know what it's been, an hour and a half. How long?
Yes.
I'm
Yes,
losing
Mom.
track of time. But here's my question. So, what would you say helped you most when you first started trading at 17 to learn, like, how to be a successful trader? Was it YouTube? Did you read books? Like, you were in medical school, going into medical school. Like, what did you say, okay, I want to start trading? What helped you most?
So I'm like a really, and by the way, thanks for all those kind words. That was very kind of you to say that.
It's
I'm
all
just
good.
trying to be helpful, but yeah, that's very sweet of you. But no, for me, I'm a very like spontaneous learner. So I've always had a very good memory and I can read quickly. And so I started trading just initially by experience. Like, I don't recommend doing this, but I kind of went in blind. I was just buying things that my friends were telling me were good plays, and it worked to an extent initially. But then, I'm the kind of person who's naturally curious. So as I would run into things, like my friends would be like, check the RSI on the chart, and I was like, what? So like I would go learn about what that was and how it's used and how it's applied, and then my friend would be like, oh, look at the VWAP. This is a screaming buy. And I'm like, okay, what's a VWAP? And I went and learned about it. So technically, the technical stuff I learned out of pure curiosity. The fundamental stuff I learned more so out of just passion, because, I've always been passionate about business and I love the way that businesses work and function. So, finding gaps in value fundamentally, that just came naturally to me. I would just look at the balance sheets, and that's another thing I encourage people to do with SEC filings and balance sheets. A lot of people dismiss it because it looks really intimidating and esoteric when you look at a balance sheet or look at an SEC filing, but it's really not. They're really streamlined and simple once you learn how to read them and learn where the key information is. That becomes extremely helpful because, at a certain juncture, you're going to be able to glance at a balance sheet or a filing and know exactly what's being said and why it's being said. And that can aid you, significantly. And the technical stuff is more so about your will to learn. Like, I didn't use any specific resources. I'm not a big reader of books. This is going to be a very unpopular opinion. Most intelligent people I know read a lot. I think books are an inefficient source of information. I think they're just too long for what they say. I can learn most things out of most books in a 10-page summary. And so I don't personally read like paperback or hardcover books. I never have. Even medical school, I didn't read the textbooks. I just read the PowerPoints. And so, I'm just always about efficiency of information. I think your time is your most valuable resource. So if I can get a more efficient source of information, I will. I started doing YouTube videos initially, when I started. There's a guy, Rainer Teo, on YouTube who's amazing for technical analysis. And I never really give YouTube plugs because most of the content there is pretty bad, in my opinion. But I learned a lot on Twitter as well, just picking up information. I had a few mentors when I started trading who would just give me advice, and it's helpful to have that, because when you run into a question you don't know or that you can't just Google, it's helpful to have somebody, for a subjective question to talk to. So, mentorship, curiosity, just simply learning about what meant what, applying it via experience. But there wasn't a specific resource I went to, and I definitely didn't read any books. I watched a few YouTube videos and use social media a bit, talk to friends, and learn from experience mostly.
Thank you so much. I have a 14-year-old son who got us all into trading. Don't even ask. During COVID, woke up one day and said, I watched YouTube. I'm getting into trading. I'm putting money. You got to help me put money in my account. I said, you're going to put your own money in your account and you're going to do this your own self. And when I tell you, I don't know if you've heard, his name is PB Investing. This is what he does. This is what he lives. He doesn't even want to go to college, and it's like a big struggle for us. And I'm like, well, you got to meet your goals. Here's what you got to do. And he's like, I'm going to do it. And I'm just, you remind me of what I feel like he's going to be when he's 27 years old. Like, it's like, I swear, I hear him and I'm like, I feel like I'm listening to Preston, like my son. Like, this is so crazy. But thank you. You're amazing. And I think he already gave you a shout out, like saying like he's listening in too, and he's like loving everything. Thank you so much for everything today.
Thank you for the kind words. That's very, very kind of you. And, I love that he's interested at a young age. I hope when I have kids that I'm going to get them into it at a young age as well. It's teaching financial independence and teaching, finance in general to your children is so important, because our education system doesn't do it, because it's not in the interest of our education system to do it. And
exactly.
so it's beautiful that you're teaching your son that. And I love that. So
thank you. He's teaching me. Let me tell you, he's teaching me.
For sure.
That's even
and
more amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
JMJ is a part of our all women's trading group, Stockianas. If any women in here would like to join, please inbox me.
Yes, it's
Bye,
the best
Ange.
group. Bye, guys.
Awesome.
Love you.
And now we have Angelo. Are you ready, Angelo?
I am. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I forgot that Stock Talk was actually you in DFW, man. I should have hit you up a while back. My real estate's my actual passion. And I forgot. I didn't know that you were in real estate too.
Yes,
But
sir, man. Yeah,
maybe
I'm
you
going to
get
do
a
an
face for
event
that
here.
too.
I'm going to do an event here in Dallas for FinTwit pretty soon. So, I'll be tweeting that out. So feel free
Cool.
to come to that.
All right, I'll check it out. Also, I definitely agree with what you were saying about the emotional and discipline about it. I think I lost some of my discipline when I actually started getting on Twitter too much. I was actually more disciplined doing my own conviction plays back when BAC was, $15-20 and American Airlines was back. I think I was more disciplined then, just playing, just fewer stocks than getting in most of them. But one of the questions I had, or two of the questions I had, was one on your scale in and scale out. Like, I like the partial thing that you do. Like, for example, the 5,000. How do you determine when your scale out is going to be? Like, I think with a fund might have been a different example or a different situation, but
Yeah.
are you getting out 30-40% to make sure that you cover your profit, to cover your principal, and then
So
riding
there's,
the rest?
yeah, so there's two, so it's subjective, right? It's per trade. So what I recommend new traders doing is every position you take, right? Rank it 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 on conviction, 5 being the highest. So when you do that, that kind of spells to you psychologically what to expect from the trade, right? Because if you're taking a trade just fleetingly on a very simple catalyst, or on a very questionable technical setup, if you're not like completely convinced that the technical setup is beautiful or the fundamental story is beautiful, that can be maybe a 1 or 2 conviction play. And with those, you want to use smaller size. You want to start scaling out at earlier profit targets, right? Some of my low conviction plays, if I put enough size into them, I'll start scaling out at plus 10%. Like, I've been doing this too long to give up money, right? I don't like leaving money on the table. So when I'm seeing green, a lot of the times, depending on the conviction of the play, I'm selling. With fun, it was a little bit different because, with fun, it's a sympathy trade, right? You're expecting spillover volume from an extreme high volume runner that was DWAC. When you're looking at trades like that, you want to use the primary runner. So this applies to sympathy trades. Anytime you're doing a sympathy trade in any sector or for any reason, you want to use the primary runner to assess the magnitude or the potential of the move for the sympathy. So usually, like, let's use an example. Let's say the primary runner ran 500%. Usually your sympathy isn't going to run 500% as well. Fun was an exception, right? DWAC ran 2,000%, Fun ran 2,000%, right? But in most cases, the sympathy runner is going to have a less magnified move. You know, if your main runner is running 500, maybe your sympathy will run 100 or 70 or 80. But the thing is you can't predict these things, right? You can't predict the actual magnitude of the move. You can predict where the move should catch resistance or selling pressure based on supply and demand zones, support and resistances, just basic technical analysis. You can predict where the move will meet pressure, but you can't predict the full magnitude of the move, especially on these kind of runners. Like, you have to understand, DWAC and Fund, these are very rare runners. These are runners where they went from almost no volume to, all-time record volume overnight. That's very rare to happen, right? Usually you see a volume ramp up. Usually with most catalysts, somebody knows, quote unquote, right? And you saw a bit of that with DWAC. You saw some bullish activity coming in, but there wasn't a volume trend to follow into the trade. And so these were unusual cases, but in most cases, depending on the trade, sympathy trades, look at the primary runner to gauge the capacity of the move. On swing trades, you're looking to pay your conviction off. You want to look for your fundamental narrative to be fulfilled or for the price to appreciate to what you feel is fair value. Day trading, you're looking for gains. You're just looking for quick gains. I never get greedy on day trading. That's a huge mistake people make. Like, when I see a 20% move on a big size day trade, I'm just out quick. I'm like, okay, fine. Unless I really, really, really think there's a high rally point. But depending on the style of trade you're taking, your rules have to change. You cannot use the same set of rules for options trading that you do for small cap equity trading. You can't use the same set of rules. So your rules have to be fluid to change depending on the type of trade you're taking.
Wow. And now we have Doug. Go ahead, Doug.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate Christine Dolbat for continuing to put this on. So Stock Talk had a question for you about sympathy plays. You mentioned earlier the bread and butter. I was wondering how you find them. What's your process? You kind of mentioned earlier with DWAC, you just Googled and found fun, but I'm looking at things like these OTC custodian plays, and I realize like with Alpha Capital and some of them, you can easily find, the sympathy plays. But how do you go about finding these, especially for OTC?
I mean, in general, whether you're doing an OTC on big boards, right? This is why I encourage people to make sector watch lists. When you make sector watch lists, you're going to know when a sector is hot, right? You can measure that either by multi-day runners. You can measure that by unusual volume. You can measure that by volume escalation. You can measure it in any number of ways. You can measure it when a bunch of names in the same sector emerge above a key support or a key moving average. There's a number of ways you can assess hotness in a sector. That's one way to do it, to find sympathy trades. Another way to do it is, use a scanner to find the top runners of the day. And, then you simply look at related plays. And generally, the stronger the connection, the better the link, right? Because you have to think of it, the market's just a bunch of buyers and sellers. So, if the connection is good enough to convince enough buyers to recruit to the stock, then you're going to get a big sympathy runner. And so, I constantly am monitoring. Every day you're going to see 100% runner, no matter how hot or cold the market is. So you always have a chance to find a sympathy to a runner. And, you can generate sizable, consistent returns doing this. I know people who do nothing but sympathy trade. I do pre-market scalping, sympathy trading, swing trading, investing, crypto. I do mostly all of the options. But there's people I know who make a living off just sympathy trading. So they don't even catch the primary runner, right? That's what you have to understand is, you can be involved in the primary runner and trading it at key levels, but, the sympathy trade makes a much cleaner move and gives you a much better entry. Because if you find the sympathy trade earlier enough, you're going to have it at a nice, floating support. You're not going to have a volume influx yet that's distorting the bid and ask. And what I mean by bid and ask distortion is when you see a big volume influx into a stock, like hundreds of millions of volume or hundreds of thousands of volume coming quick, the bid ask spread gets distorted because people don't know what to pay, right? The asks are getting put in at these random numbers that are much higher because people are expecting a move. And then you have random bid chasers who are filling up the level two. It gets scattered. And so that doesn't settle out for a while. But if you find these sympathies quickly and you're decisive and you act, and you're like, yeah, this link makes sense. I'm going to buy in and I know the volume will come. You're going to get a much cleaner move. You're not going to have to worry about how do I find my way in on this bid ask spread because it's, and anybody who's looked at level two data on a volume influx, this. you know how quickly it's transforming when you have these huge volume influxes. And so people who were trying to catch fun at the open, for example, they couldn't catch it. And if they did, most of them probably held a bag because, the bids and asks were getting so wide apart so quickly. You saw how many times it got halted, right? So you got to pay attention to being early. And that sounds like, oh my God, dude, you're being facetious. Like, no shit, you want to be early. But I'm saying you have to stress yourself to be there early because, trying to chase the move or FOMO into the move when the whole market's already caught on it, you're just chasing. You didn't find that play or get in that play at a good entry. Now you're just chasing and hoping that you didn't buy it at the top. For all you know, 10 minutes later, you're down 20% on your entry. So you got to be careful with high momentum plays. Like I said earlier, you have to define your risk. If you don't define your risk, you can take a 100K loss on every trade and you'll go bankrupt. Like, you have to define your risk. You can't just keep swinging for home runs with no risk definition. It's no successful trader I know, not one, doesn't define their risk. Not one. There's nobody I know that doesn't have a set limit for their risk on every trade they take, not a single trader. So if that doesn't tell you that you should have one, then I don't know what will. If you're sports gambling, for example, this is an analogy I use a lot. If you were sports gambling and the sports book told you can set a cap on your loss at 15%, would you say yes? Every single person would say yes. It's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do that on your stocks?
Yeah, this is crazy. Siler, go ahead.
Hi, Christine. How are you?
Good.
So I'm gonna start by just something small. Gurgavin, I sent you a tweet of some guy impersonating you. I don't know if you've seen it. Anyway, so I wanted to ask you, Stock, about CRTD, and since you ladies are into NFTs, what do you think about the drop of the Trump NFT today?
I heard about that play. I didn't look too much into it. I saw a bunch of people were DMing me saying that they dropped a Trump NFT. I just didn't know if they had exclusive rights to it or if they were just making one to get in on the hype. I didn't know the details of it, so
No,
I didn't
they
actually get
they
into that
have
play.
pictures that are hidden and that can
You,
haunt Trump for his life.
okay, I don't know what Gerger's saying, but
You
yeah,
have to pay
I'm
a
not familiar with
million to
that
buy
play.
the NFT.
I didn't look into that play enough, man, to give you a real opinion on that. So I wish I could, but yeah, I did hear about it. People were DMing me about it, but Friday I was just basking in my profits from funds. So I didn't really do much on Friday, honestly. I just was chilling and enjoying myself. And my swing trade ran at the end of the day, so I had a good day. Wasn't really looking for too much else, but yeah, I missed that one. Didn't jump on that train. Didn't really know the details of it, but I did hear about the Trump NFT.
Thank you, Siler. And then now we have Swamp Trader.
Yeah, so I was wanting to touch on when you get into a ticker that you believe you done your DD is building that core position and trade around it, whether it's big board, OTC, whatever.
Yeah. So okay, so I don't always use core positions. So I use core positions on high conviction plays, right? So I've learned that psychologically FOMO is really hard to avoid no matter how hard you learn it, right? Like it's just human nature to chase things that are running and to be involved. You have to discipline yourself out of it. But I use core positions to try to, when I can't predict the capacity of the move. So if I see a company that I think is really undervalued and I'm in it, and I know that there's potential near-term catalysts that are going to give me unusual strength in the stock, I know that I want to benefit, profitably from those pops. So that's why I build core positions because, if I think, hey, there's a big pop coming potentially for a catalyst, but I also think the company's undervalued and I want to hold it, for a multi-month swing or even sometimes a multi-year swing, in the case of like Tesla, for example, or Square for me, right? There have been, I haven't done multi-year swings very often, but there have been a few examples, Tesla, Square, Disney, there's few examples that I have done that. But most cases, I'm doing multi-month swings with high conviction positions. So I keep the core to benefit off the potential aggregation of buyers, right? Because the thing you'll notice is that you always have hype moves that come on every stock, even big board stocks when big news drops or big earnings report drops, you have these hype moves that come where a bunch of new buyers come in and they're willing to buy at any price. as a holder of a stock, you want to benefit off those explosions. But as somebody who thinks the stock will continue to appreciate, right? Because like I said earlier, the market is inefficient. The market doesn't instantly realize every undervalued play. It takes months, sometimes years for the market to realize that. So if you want to benefit off that gradual move, some of my biggest winners ever have been stocks that have held for 3 months and just not really worried about the intraday price action on the core position, and left them for a few months, and they went up, 600, 700, 800%. And I'm like, okay, my conviction paid off, right? So in those situations, you have to let your conviction dictate what you're doing. But keeping a core position, I think, is important on high conviction positions. I don't think it's that important on sporadic trades or trades you're quickly taking for, what you think will be a day trade or meet. Like on day trades, I don't have core positions. On day trades, I just have one position and I sell it when I'm satisfied and I'm out. But, on swing trades, I usually have a core position so that I can benefit, without getting FOMO from, which everybody at some point feels.
Dr. Stock Talk Weekly. We will close it out there. You've dropped tremendous amounts of knowledge. You're like a walking encyclopedia for stocks, and we appreciate you greatly and can't wait till you launch your inner circle of trading, because we're all going to be there. You guys remember, use the code OTC Club, he said, and we'll get a special discount. So this has gone way longer than our usual. So I want to make sure we're going to upload this. So I want you guys all to know that we will upload this next week, but we're going to cut out a lot of the questions because it won't let us convert it. So do make sure you keep your notes and everything, but we will get that up. And make sure you guys follow Stock Talk Weekly. I'm sure you guys have already because he's insane. Make sure to turn on the notifications as well. And let's all make sure that we support him and get into his inner circle of trading so we can all learn his vast knowledge. Thank you so much, guys. And we're so sorry for everybody that's been waiting. There's like so many people requesting.
Still requested.
Yes. And I don't know if you want to address that, Stock Talk Weekly, like if they could send
Inbox you.
your email or something.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of DMs, but I try to answer, as many that have, decent questions. I don't answer the ones where people are asking me for price targets or,
I hate people.
things like that. But, if you ask a legitimate question, I will try to get to your DMs. Please keep in mind that there are a lot of them. So, but yeah, if we didn't get to your question, you guys can feel free to DM me. But yeah, I appreciate you, both for having me, and you guys are great hosts, and this was a good time, and hopefully people learn things. And I just encourage everybody to FinTwit's a great community, and it's an amazing place to learn. I've learned a lot here personally as well, and it's great to have people to bounce knowledge off of. But whoever you're following or whoever your furu is or whatever it is, please be independent and learn to find your own stocks, learn to make your own decisions, learn to execute your own trades, learn to find your own profit targets, take your money when you're satisfied with it, and don't trust the market, because the market's not your friend. We can make money from it, right? But be independent, generate your own ideas, and prioritize the preservation of your capital over everything, and have a will to learn, whatever mode of media you use. If you're a better visual learner, better verbal learner, jump on the spaces. If whatever you are, everybody's different, but have a will to learn, because if you want to do this for an extended period of time and do it sustainably, if you don't have a will to learn, then you're going to be at the starting place that you were when you started trading. So yeah, that's what I'll close with.
Thank you, Stock Talk Weekly, and thank you everybody for joining us here at the OTC Club. Feel free to follow all the hosts up here, Stock Talk Weekly and the OTC Club. Go ahead and hit that bell, and go ahead and hit that bell for reminders. And we will see you on West Coast Wednesdays. All right, you guys.
Thanks a lot, Stock
Love
Talk,
you
man. That was
guys.
amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks,
Truly
guys. I
legendary
appreciate it.
spaces. Thanks, guys. Enjoy
All
your
right.
Sunday Eve, guys.
Take it easy, guys.
See you guys at the bell tomorrow. Ciao.
Let's get it. Let's trade. Bye.
Yay.